ProRes RAW is more like RAW on the Sony A7s III. Today we're going to find out what it is and is it worth it. What's good guys, my name is Oleg Nikitin, you're watching No Limits On channel, and tonight, or today, Atomos has announced the new firmware, pretty tough word, 10.64 for Atomos Ninja V, which contains ISO adjustment and white balance adjustment for the Sony A7s III in Final Cut Pro X if you're shooting in ProRes RAW. So I've tested it out, and today I'm going to show you everything you need to know, how it compares to the internal 10-bit footage in Slog3. Atomos introduced for Sony A7s III two types of adjustments, ISO and white balance, but there is no tint adjustment in Final Cut Pro X, so you'll have to dial in the tint manually with your color correction tools. So let's jump into Final Cut Pro X, and I'm going to show you everything how to work in a SDR, standard dynamic range timeline, with this HDR raw footage. So when you put the footage onto your SDR timeline, the program will say if you want to work with it as a regular file, and you'll convert it into Slog3 12-bit file and work with it. So let's start off with this. Let me hit the screen record, and here we are in Final Cut Pro X. If you hit this raw file and you go here to the settings right there, you can see that you right now have camera ISO, which is 640 as it was shot, and the file that was recorded internally has the same ISO, but you can change this value, for instance 12,800, or even like ISO 100. Let's keep it 640. And also here you have your exposure offset, and also here you have your camera color temperature, which was 2500 Kelvin, very cool one. And if we set it like so, you see that the picture is very cool. I mean, not cool like great, but you know, very cold picture. But if you adjust it a little bit, you can see that it has around maybe 5300 Kelvin. And you can adjust it whatever you want, like so, like so. Of course, you need to convert it, so you change it right here, raw to log conversion for Sony Slog3 S-3.Cine, and camera LUT to none. If you set it to the same one, you will see something like this. We don't want this, we want this to be as a regular Slog3 file. I have a separate video how to work with Slog3 on the Sony A7s III, here's the link, and also I have a big video about ProRes RAW. You can also check this video out, also link is here, everything you need to know about ProRes RAW, and this video will add the white balance adjustment and ISO adjustment. This is the only thing you need to do with the file itself, and then you work just with like a regular log file. So here I have my custom LUT and my color board. You can adjust it a little bit as a log file, and you go here and tweak the file as well. Go to settings, and here is your color temperature and ISO adjustments. Of course, YouTube compression would not allow us to see all the differences and nuances. That is why I have uploaded the files. The link will be down in the description below. These are the internally recorded files and the externally recorded raw ProRes RAW files. You can tweak them a little bit, play with those files, and you can see how it's much more easier to work and to color correct the image in RAW than in wrong white balance image in regular internally recorded 10-bit file in Slog3. So let's go to the files. Here is the internally recorded file, and I've tried to pull it because it was like so, very cool white balance, and I wasn't able to get anything good from this file. And as you can see, if we turn this on and off, that the files are pretty different in terms of lens corrections. So the ProRes RAW file doesn't contain lens corrections at all, and as soon as I switch on and off those files, you can see that it's not corrected. Keep that in mind, guys, and also you won't be able to use steady shot active. It's also disabled when you shoot in RAW. And of course you won't have any camera noise reduction, so you have to work with it in post, and you will apply something like Neat Video to correct the noise in your image. And also you can get pretty good results. Philip Bloom says that it's much better than the internal noise reduction of the Sony A7s III. And if you want some more flexibility in terms of noise reduction, you definitely need to use the RAW. If you overexpose the RAW file, you will definitely won't be able to get the footage back to normal life. As you can see, it's still blown out right here. And if we set it to the regular 640 ISO, you can see it was overexposed, and the internally recorded footage was also extremely overexposed, and I wasn't able to recover any highlights. So you'll need to use zebras at 95 IRE and to look at those not to overexpose your image. With underexposure, it's a little easier, and I'll show you in a bit how it works. So here is the before and after. Before is ungraded, very cool picture and very cool image. And you can see that ProRes RAW has no issues with correcting white balance, but if you try to correct the internally recorded file, it will have some parasite colors and you won't be able to correct it 100% if you miss the white balance, if you misclick or something. So that is why ProRes RAW is a good tool. And if you're using the internal recording, just use the white card or the gray card to set the white balance correctly. If you expose correctly, you won't have any issues in ProRes RAW file or in the internally recorded file whatsoever. And as you can see right here, the noise is much more pronounced in the ProRes RAW, but you can work with it with Neat Video, for instance, and get pretty clean results with crisp and detailed image, but the internal noise reduction is much more hefty. And here we have heavily underexposed file, which is 640 ISO, and let's switch it to 12800, the second native ISO for Sony A7s III, and we can see that it is pretty good. But if we try to push the image from the internal recording, which was shot at ISO 640, and we add around 4 stops of light in post, you can definitely see that it's very noisy and flat and not pleasing at all compared to the ProRes RAW file. And if we crop 300%, you can see that the image in ProRes RAW is much crisper, but much more noisier. It's okay. You can apply Neat Video and get some outstanding result and save this crispness and detail in your image. And in this example, we also made from 640 ISO 12800 ISO, and we get pretty clean and nice looking picture. And if we correct the internally recorded Slog3 file with heavy underexposed footage, we have pretty mushy colors and it's not pleasing at all. And here we have our white balance at 9900, and in post I made it in RAW to 6000 Kelvin, and in the internally recorded file I have just graded it to kind of match the colors. You can see the results in this comparison, and actually the RAW is a little better, but the internally recorded file is pretty okay. And now about the nuances in the workflow. Not all the HDMI cables are compatible and working great with Sony A7s III and Atomos Ninja V. I've bought around 10 cables from AliExpress. They are all pretty cheap, but only one is working pretty fine. I have a link down in the description below. It's very cheap, around, I don't know, a couple of bucks, like $5. And it's working in 4K 50 in the regular mode, in ProRes LT for instance, and in ProRes RAW 25p it's working flawlessly, but in 4K 50 ProRes RAW it may have some drop frames, so maybe you'll need to buy the appropriate cable from Atomos to actually use this full potential of this combo. The second thing is that if you changed your ISO or white balance in one file and you split this file in your editing software, you will change it in both pieces. So if you change white balance here, this part will also change white balance. So if you have changing white balance and exposure during one take, Please keep that in mind during the editing process. So, did ProRes RAW become an actual RAW? Full-size RAW? I think no, because ProRes RAW is not that capable as Red RAW or probably B RAW, Blackmagic RAW, but still white balance and ISO is a very good combo, and I'm pretty okay with using those two tools, and I don't really need a lot more. And yeah. Still not the best one, but I'm really glad that Apple and Atomos are collaborating and providing us with better and better solutions. And now let's find out, why do you need this ProRes RAW? What are the main purposes of it? The first one, if you don't want to or you have no time to set proper exposure or white balance, for instance during reportage shoot or in some extreme conditions. But just keep in mind that overexposing is very bad, so keep your exposure at normal levels or a little lower, and you will be able to recover those shadows, but you won't be able to recover highlights if you overexpose. The second thing is, if you're using it on a professional shoot and you really know that you will be able to show the advantages of 12-bit codec, and probably you know what you're talking about if you're using it in some extreme lighting conditions, some colorful lighting, some dynamic lighting, and all that stuff. So this is the second case. The third case, if you want to kind of surpass and overcome the internal noise reduction. For instance, Sony FX6 has 3 different values of internal noise reduction, but Sony A7s III doesn't have a single one, so it's kind of built-in noise reduction. And if you use ProRes RAW, you have no noise reduction applied, and you can choose in post the amount, and you'll save the detail and sharpness, which is cool. And the fourth case, not the most popular one, I guess, is kind of a backup for your 10-bit footage. For instance, you shot something in 10-bit footage internally and in ProRes RAW externally, and you cannot push and pull the image how you want it in 10-bit codec. And you can use this ProRes RAW file to tweak the white balance or to set a different ISO. For instance, you shot everything in ISO 10,000 and you realize that it's very noisy and you forgot to switch to 12,800, the second native ISO, and you can do it in ProRes RAW. So kind of a super backup option. So guys, am I going to be using the ProRes RAW now, since we have the white balance and ISO adjustments? On bigger projects, of course, because I will have both internally recorded 10-bit Slog3 files and externally recorded ProRes RAW files, and I will choose the right ones for my editing workflow if I want to work with noise reduction, with colors a little more, and so on. And what do you think about this new ProRes RAW, guys? Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. Should you buy Atomos Ninja V right now for your Sony A7s III for ProRes RAW? I think more yes, because it's a great recorder, great monitor, and it has much more sense than it had half a year before when I shot my first ProRes RAW video. Really in depth. Check this video out, guys. So if you like this video, please share your thoughts in the comment section below, hit like and subscribe buttons as I say in my videos, and the notifications bell, of course. This was Oleg Nikitin, No Limit Son, and I see you guys in the next video. Take care. And don't forget, the files are in the description. Tweak those a little bit, play with those a little bit. Take care.